Hey guys, I am really excited about today's unbox and swatch because I am unboxing and swatching Supervision's new Rock Plus Mica watercolors. So you guys know I love super granulation. I love when we get those wild color splits. And these colors promise not only super granulation, but also chameleon effects. How cool is this? I purchased this off of AliExpress and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you guys today. Hey art nerds, I've got something really exciting to unbox and swatch with you guys today. So as you guys probably know, I really like Supervision watercolors, particularly the interesting granulating ones, and I have reviewed quite a few of those. In fact, I'm going to do something a little bit out of order. I actually have a review for even more of those that's going to come out after this review, even though this was recorded after that review, simply because I am really excited about these and I want to share these with you guys as soon as possible. So they have these new Rock Mica layered watercolors out. There's like 4 different sets, and this is one of those 4 sets. This is the set I thought would be the most conducive to the kind of art I make. But they do have other sets available. I purchased this on AliExpress and it arrived not super long ago, but I was in the middle of doing Christmas stuff, so I didn't have quite time to get to it. But Christmas is now past and we can finally take a look at these Supervision Rock Mica layered watercolors. This is the full-size set with tubes, and this retails on AliExpress for around $59.99. Not really seeing it sold any cheaper, and I will link a few different stores where you guys can order them. I'm also seeing a lot of the like sample sets, which generally I try to avoid here on the channel. However, what I did is I ordered the remaining sample sets, or the remaining 3 sets as sample sizes so that we can at least compare those. And the sample sets retail for around $10.65, kind of depending on the size of the samples, because different people on AliExpress are kind of repotting them and selling them in different sizes. If you're familiar with AliExpress, then you're going to be familiar with that practice. So this is the full-size set, and I have 3 more sets coming in eventually, supposedly. We'll see about that, which are the sample size sets sold by third-party vendors who are buying this set and just kind of repotting it. So I'm going to take a look at those in a follow-up video. So this arrived package with some of the watercolors that I'm going to be reviewing as part of the Student Grade Showdown. I believe the packaging was already kind of torn at the time, and we have, I think this just says Rock Mica layered watercolor. I think this just says Ocean Paradise. So I'm not going to pull out Google Translate for that. And then up here, we have the colors in this set. So we have Chameleon Color 311, Chameleon Color 309, 321, 322, 323, 327, 329, 312, 317, and 308. And what I thought was really cool about this is that it kind of combines 2 things I really like. Granulating watercolors, which I love, with special effects watercolors that can make owning original art even more fun, because these are effects that show up best in real life. But hopefully they'll show up pretty good on camera, and it'll give you guys a good idea of how these perform. So I think Supervision has been really smart. It does seem like they're trying to accommodate their English-speaking audience, which I appreciate. That's a big help for me. So we have the Chinese here, and then it looks like we have the English here. So this is the Ocean Paradise set. It is Rock Mica layered watercolor. The tube sizes are 8 milliliter. There are 10 tubes. Raw material toner, so generally that means pigment. Raw material toner, pearlescent mineral mica Arabic gum preservative. Environmental Protection Standard ENV 71-3, LAMA, ASTM D4236. Testing agency is Intertech Testing Group, and the producer is Hangzhou Zhang's Cultural Goods. And then we have their physical address, their email address, and their telephone number. So I really like the packaging. It is very cute, and I am a sucker for cute, but I'm looking forward to actually getting inside of this and taking a look at it with you guys today. It looks like Supervision has kept things super minimal with this set. We get the tubes, we get the package, no swatch sheet, no additional materials, at least that I can see. Inside the packaging, this is foam, so it's like really meant to be a nicer upgraded presentation. And we have our 10 full-size tubes. So I'm gonna pull it out and see if we've got a name for it in English that I can find. It doesn't seem like there's an English name. Here is the color number. Rock Mica Pearlescent Layered Watercolor. That was on the front. Series G, whatever that means. Maybe that's why these are kind of expensive for what they are. Pigment name, or pigment CI name, Mica, and then PR 146, PB 28. Transparency is semi-opaque, and it has 3 stars of light fast. So it seems like with these watercolors, they do actually provide the pigment information instead of just saying mica, which is really heartening because we have a bit of a theory. It is definitely not a necessarily verified theory because a lot of these companies would never cop to this. But I think a lot of the cheaper student grade watercolors are using dyes, and those dyes are then attached to some sort of a substrate like chalk. Not necessarily chalk, but similar to chalk in order to create watercolors. And that's why pigment information for a lot of those cheaper watercolors might not be available. I mean, these companies do not respond back and they do not want to tell you what's in it. Now, Supervision watercolors, I've had pretty good experiences with them. I really love the granulating watercolors. And I did actually review their little 12 pan studio set. And I had kind of mixed feelings about it. But basically everything really special that they do, I seem to really like it. And I'd really like to try out their tube watercolors as well to see if I like those any better than their half pan watercolors. What I'm going to do today is I am going to swatch these out. I'm going to put these into half pans, let them dry for a while, which is not going to happen just today. And then I'm going to re-swatch them to see how well they reactivate and if some of these special effects reactivate just as well from tube as they do, or from half pan as they do from tube. That's a pretty standard test for me. I'm still debating whether or not I want the field test to be part of this video or in a secondary video. Generally, when I put them in a second video, it allows me to spend a lot more time working on the field test and allows it to be just a better, more immersive field test overall. Whereas the unboxing swatch is just to give you guys an idea of the product, some general ideas for how you might be able to use it, and what the product itself is generally capable of. I might try a lift test with these, although to be honest, with these sort of inclusions like mica and pearlescence, those tend to be really prone to lifting. So I see these more as special effects or the sort of watercolors that you don't really try to do a lot on top of them, or you save them till the end of your watercolor illustration. So these kind of fall into their own category, and I haven't yet 100% devised tests for these, but my goal is to really show off how cool the super granulation effects are with these and just to kind of get a feel for them. And I don't know why the other 3 sets are still in mail limbo, but I hope you guys will look forward to that. I'll do all 3 of those sets in a follow-up video as well. So what I think is gonna happen is I think we're gonna have the unboxing swatch for this, we're gonna have the unboxing swatch for the other 3 sets, and then we'll have a field test, probably very similar to how I do the super granulating field tests. So these are some of the finished super granulation field tests. This is the first set. So I'm basically treating them as special effects colors, colors that would work well for comic backgrounds. Although you can use them for your own watercolor illustration, and I'd like to try that in the future. I just haven't gotten there yet. And then I have some additional colors that I haven't had a chance yet to batch paint. So these are about halfway done. And I have a bunch of these because I really like the super granulating colors. I even have some of the Paul Rubens ones here at the back. So this is probably very similar to what I'm going to do for a field test with these. So rather than wasting paint by putting a dab down on another surface and then activating it and then kind of rinsing that down the drain, I thought I would instead start by putting these into half pans, swatching them when they're wet, and then swatching them again when they're dry. So rather than going through 1 million Altoids tins, which are great and come with free mints, but it gets kind of pricey, I finally bought a 24 pack of these little hinged containers on Amazon, since I do decant so many watercolors. And then I have these cute Meeden clear half pans. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these in half pans, and I'll talk to you guys about the colors in this set, the pigments, and their light, fast, and opacity information. Before we get too far into things, I want to remind you guys that I purchased these out of pocket using funds from my Patreon over on AliExpress. So this was not sent to me. This is not a sponsored video. All opinions are my own, but I am a fan of Supervision products. So I guess keep that in mind. I guess that's a good thing. Another thing I'd like to remind you guys about, because this has been a big issue for me, is that if you enjoy the videos I do, if you enjoy the kind of content I make, not only can you help support it and help it continue by joining me over on Patreon, but another big way you can encourage me is twofold. You can click the bell notification that says all notifications, and that way you'll never miss an update from me. You'll never miss a review or a tutorial. And you can make sure that you have your YouTube notifications turned on. So this is two separate things. The bell notification is for my channel, whereas the YouTube notification is for any other channels that you might be subscribed to, including my channel. Because you guys don't know, you might be missing some really cool stuff. I had a little chat with YouTube, and they pointed out to me that only 2.8 of the people who watch my videos are both subscribed to the channel, have the bell notification clicked, and are also utilizing YouTube notifications. So if you've been wondering why you're not getting notifications from me, that could definitely be a reason. They also pointed out that the vast majority of people who are watching my videos are non-subscribers. So I want to say a big ol' hey, hello, welcome. This is one of the reasons I tend to repeat myself a lot in videos, is because I know a lot of y'all aren't subscribers and you might be new here and you found me through the watch page. I review a lot of art supplies. I mainly focus on watercolors and on alcohol markers, and I'm a comic artist. I make the webcomic 7-Inch Kara. It's a watercolor comic, so a lot of how I'm looking at watercolors kind of comes from that. I also used to be a convention artist doing a lot of quick fire commissions. So when I'm reviewing alcohol markers, it's through the lens of an illustrator, a convention artist, and somebody who teaches art. So if you haven't clicked subscribe yet and you like what I do, make sure you click subscribe, because I don't know about you guys, but I'll fall down a rabbit hole where I watch a whole lot of someone's videos for a while, and then for a couple of days I get busy and I don't, and then YouTube quits recommending those videos to me, and after about a month I wonder, hey, whatever happened to this YouTuber I really liked, without realizing that I never actually subscribed to them. So if you're subscribed, you have the bell notification on, and you have YouTube notifications on, there should be no way that you're missing any of my updates. But if you don't want to do that, I honestly 100% understand you. It can get kind of annoying having those things pop up in your notification bar. So I do make sure that I share everything that I make on the community tab of my channel, as well as on my Patreon page, set to public once a week so you never miss an update. And I also make sure I tweet about it when I have a new video out. So there's a lot of ways you can find out about what's new and coming up here on the channel. And I hope you guys will consider sticking around, hanging out, and maybe checking out some of my playlists. So to get this mini palette set up, I have a small metal tin from Amazon, some double stick tape, some white washi tape, and some half pans. I also have a small permanent pen that I'm going to use to write on the washi tape so I can denote the color number as well as the pigment, since these paints don't come with individualized names. I find it's really helpful to get everything kind of written down and attached to the half pans, and then get the half pans into the palette before I even start to fill them, unless I plan on letting the paint dry fully and then putting it in the palette itself. The one thing I want to point out is every time I order tube watercolors from AliExpress, they always do a little bit of explodey when I'm trying to fill my half pans. And I think it's because they were flown here rather than say shipped here, and that pressurizes them. And I've noticed that when I fly with tube watercolors, the same thing happens. So you just want to be a little bit more careful. Ideally, you would scrape that excess paint or the paint that ends up in the cap into these half pans or suck it back into the tube, because with watercolor, a little really does go a long way, and we don't want to waste something that is that nice and that expensive. So here are all 10 of our colors in their half pans. These really remind me of the watercolors that Kabocha made a while back. Maybe not, hers are a little bit tidier on top than my poor efforts, but you know, I could tamp this down and get the paints to settle quite a bit. So next, we're gonna swatch these. Something else I want to point out is that theoretically what you guys saw me just do is pretty similar to what some people on AliExpress are doing, where they're taking a more expensive product and kind of stretching it out among half pans and then selling you a sample of that. And on one hand, as an art supply reviewer, I love that idea in that it means I can buy a small sample, tell if I like the product, and then turn around and buy the more expensive version if I do like it, rather than buying things and maybe not liking them. And I often will share my watercolors with my friends in a very similar way. The downside well, there's a few downsides, but the major downside to me as an artist and an art supply reviewer is I can't trust if what they say they're selling me is actually what they're selling me. And this is particularly true. Like, I wouldn't be buying like Daniel Smith or other American-made watercolor samples off of AliExpress, simply because, think about it, they got to ship it to China and then they got to ship it back to you. And you can buy dot cards here in the US for, honestly, the dot cards are kind of overpriced for what they are, but at least they're not shipping it all the way to China and then shipping it all the way back to you. So anyway, now I am going to go ahead and swatch these, frankly, beautiful colors. Look at these. They look like makeup. I love it. On my cotton rag watercolor paper, and I am using my Blick Studio 100% cotton rag paper. So this is what I use for pretty much all of the unbox and swatches. And we've got 10 colors. So theoretically, we wouldn't need a pad this big, but I want to make sure there is lots of room for us to be able to see how these colors granulate out. Since this is a little bit different from how I generally swatch watercolors, I just kind of want to walk you guys through the process a little bit. So with these sort of super granulating watercolors, they really do well if you work with them wet into wet. At least that's where you'll notice the most granulation split, which to me is the most interesting property for these kind of paints. So I'm going to be doing 5 squares and then another 5 squares. I'm going to apply a square of water first, then I'm going to dab my paint in and just let it diffuse. And typically I also like to use the hyperlapse feature to just kind of take advantage of that beautiful diffusion of paint. I mean, that's the best part. When I'm editing, I love watching the paint diffuse out or dry in hyperlapse. I think that's just so cool. So we've got our cotton rag paper, we've got our 10 colors, I've got a cup of clean filtered water, we've got 2 watercolor brushes, and I think we're about ready to get started. This is the Ocean Paradise palette. It has 2 chameleon sheen colors. There are 10 colors total in this set, and there are 4 sets total. I'm going to be reviewing the other 3 sets in an upcoming video, so keep an eye out for that. Those are going to be in the sample size. This is the only full-size set that I purchased. So in this set, we have number 311. It is Series G. It contains mica, PR146, and PB28. It is semi-opaque with 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 309, which is Series G. It contains mica, PG7. It is semi-opaque and has 3 stars of light fastness. We have 321 Series E. It contains mica, PR122, and is semi-opaque with 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 322 Series E. It contains mica, PV23. It is semi-opaque and has 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 329, which is Series E. It contains mica, PR122, and PB28. It is semi-opaque and contains 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 327, which is Series E. It contains mica, as well as PR146 and PB36. It is semi-opaque with 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 317, which is Series D. It contains mica, PG7, PY3. It is semi-opaque and has 3 stars of light fastness. We've got 305, which is Series D. It contains mica, PR146. It is semi-opaque with 3 stars of light fastness. And we've got 312, which is also Series D. It contains mica, PG7, and is semi-opaque with 3 stars of light fastness. So all of the colors in the Ocean Paradise set are semi-opaque. They do contain mica and at least 1 pigment and have 3 stars of light fastness. And many of the tubes burp, so just be kind of careful about that when you're filling your half pans. Originally, when I was swatching these, I kind of wondered how many of these tubes would be super granulating colors with an additional mica element. And I have no problems with that. I was just curious. That's what I would have done in that situation. It does seem like none of these actually do that, which is kind of disappointing. That was what I was kind of hoping for. But I haven't tried the other 3 sets just yet. So maybe more of those will contain that. I don't know. And most of these are really cool. One is kind of underwhelming, and the black and gold probably need to dry out in a half pan to be more effective. Since these are brand new, there's still a lot of gum arabic that's on the top, and drying half pans can be really helpful with controlling that. I was hoping for more of a punch of color, but that might improve with drying them in half pans. So I may have also just worked too wet. As pretty as these are, they're not as punchy and saturated as I'd really hoped for, or as punchy and saturated as the other super granulating colors are. So I think I'm just going to try to work with them in a greater saturation with less water, and hopefully we'll really see that color payoff and that color saturation. So I decided to try swatching them more saturated to see if that would improve things. And the colors are more saturated, but I seriously think that allowing the half pans to dry out more will really improve how these handle. They aren't bad at all. I just want a lot more saturation from my paints. So I dried them out over the dehumidifier for a few days to see if they'd handle any better. Colors are a bit more saturated when I handle them a little bit more saturated than when I'm just dipping them into a wash of water. But I'm really kind of looking for even more color payoff than this, especially because a lot of the promo images actually show that. So I was kind of thinking that allowing these half pans to really dry out is really going to help alleviate some of my concerns about saturation. I think allowing them to dry out will really kind of concentrate the color, and we're going to get a bigger punch of color when we add them to water. And that's something that I kind of noticed with the granulating tubes as well. So I'm gonna go put these by my dehumidifier so they can dry out for a while, and I'll check back in with you guys once these are not exactly tube fresh anymore. I've dried these out for a few days on top of my dehumidifier. I think it actually did a good job of drying them out, so we can actually test them out again to see how well they reconstitute. So I've got my Blick Studio paper. I'm gonna grab myself a palette knife and we'll get to swatching. So often with tube watercolors here in Southeast Louisiana, I have difficulty getting my watercolors to dry out in the half pans quickly, but putting them in a room with a dehumidifier really helped a lot. So if you're having problems getting your watercolors to dry, you could try that. So they are definitely more saturated straight from the pan, and they're easier to work with too. They reactivated quite well, and I would actually recommend doing this if you want to work with these watercolors. So we're going to do the same two tests that we did earlier, one where I'm dabbing them into water the same way I do with the super granulation watercolors to see how they split out, and then another where I mostly paint with the color and then I'm going to dab in some water to see how they bloom. So dabbing them into water, they handle pretty similarly to how they handled with my first swatch test. It was just easier to get that really saturated color. They still disperse out quite a bit, and I was really hoping for like a three-way color split where we have our staining color, our granulating color, and then our chameleon, interference, or our pearlescent additive. It seems like these are mostly just that additive plus either a staining or a granulating color. So it'd be really wild to see some watercolors that do a cool three-way split. This is really the way I would recommend that you handle these paints if you're looking for more intense effects. So we're working with them at a pretty full saturation, and then I'm dabbing in just a little bit of water to cause some blooming. So this technique works really well on cotton rag paper. I don't think it would work as well on a cheaper cellulose paper just because they can't handle those super wet into wet techniques nearly as well as a good cotton rag can. And these are fun. I wish Kabocha would try a hand at making some super granulating watercolor splits with interesting add-ins, because I can see a bunch of potential for such wild special effect colors, but I know nobody else is really going to deliver those. So actually, at the time of recording this, I've already talked to Kabocha about just such a project, and we might have something fun in the works in the future. These are definitely more saturated from the pan rather than from the tube, and they reactivate really well. So I would recommend that this method is the method you use if you want to use these paints. They just handle so much better in the half pan than they do from the tube. And so I did it the same way for the first set as I did when I was doing it from the tube, so straight into water. And they're not really dissimilar, but I found that it was easier for me to get more saturated color, so I didn't have to go in as many times, but it still disperses out quite a bit. But I think I found a better way with these. So you see this bottom set, I did them differently. I painted it pretty saturated onto it and then just dabbed in some water. Whereas with this one, what I did is I did saturated and then I washed it out with water. And you do get some interesting effects with this, so it could really just be what you're looking for. You know, what are you trying to paint with these? But I like this method a lot because you get these blooms. So this probably would work best on a cotton rag paper. But I have to say, these are so much fun. I'm actually talking to Kabocha right now about making our own bespoke ones that kind of fill in the gaps that I feel like these kind of have, because what I want is I basically want something kind of like Brusho, where we get that intense super granulation, we get those wild color splits, and then we have like a really fun duochrome interference or special effects additive mixed in. So we're already kind of talking about that, and that we might see something like that this spring, you know, fingers crossed if things go well. But other than that, I'm really pretty excited about these new Supervision colors. I have some, let's call them samples, you know, where they parcel them out coming in. Those haven't arrived yet, but I will show those off in another video. Hopefully those are the real deal and not a knockoff. And I do want to do a field test with these. I think I'm going to do that on the little mini Paul Rubens cookie. I'm going to do it on this, since this is a 100% cotton rag thing, and these do seem to be really receptive to a lot of water, so I want to work on something that's going to be receptive to what I have in mind. So keep an eye out for that as well. I'm going to probably handle it pretty simple. These really remind me of kind of like angelic colors, so I might do like a series of little cherub drawings. I think that would be pretty cute. So keep an eye out for that as well. And of course, for posterity, for future me, I got to make a little swatch map so I know which colors are which in this mini palette, and I have some idea as to the special effects. While it's fairly apparent from the actual half pans what these colors will do, this kind of swatch card is really handy for quick reference, and it also gives you a good idea of what they're actually capable of. I'm also going to do a full saturation swatch underneath, just in case I decide I want that full saturation for some reason. All right, so what did you guys think of the Supervision Chameleon colors, the Rock Plus Mica in Ocean Paradise? So I have like an AliExpress curse. As soon as I basically wrap up a video, if I'm waiting on other parts for that video and I'm like, oh, I'll just do that in another video, guess what comes in? The rest of the stuff. Oh, I apologize for the background noise. We are still in Hurricane Ida recovery. A lot of people are still getting the roofs taken care of. So if you can spare a thought, if you can spare some kindness for the people in Southeast Louisiana who might not be talked about when we talk about Hurricane Ida, because we talk about New Orleans and that's about it, I would really appreciate it. So speaking of the AliExpress curse, the other 3 sets, which are written in Chinese, so I have to look up their names, but the other 3 sets arrived from AliExpress today, like this morning. So these are like hilarious. I'm gonna review these in a separate video because I've got 3 rather than just 10. So this is what, 30 colors to swatch? So that's a whole nother video. But this is hilarious because I paid $10 each for these, and these are ridiculously small. I mean, they are like chiclet thin, and I know that's a common thing. So this will be interesting because not only will it be a chance for me to look at what I think are, I mean, what was sold to me as, but it's AliExpress and they've been repackaged, so I have no way of knowing 100%. But it gives me a chance to kind of take a look at the other Supervision Rock Plus Mica colors, but it also gives me a chance to take a look at this sort of repackaging, which in general I am very against, just because as a reviewer I kind of like it, but as somebody who wants to know, just because it's like a sample size of something so you can figure out if you like it or not, but in terms of trust and provenance, these are always kind of sus, especially with like American brands, but we can talk about that in this video coming up. So I found that the Supervision I found that the Supervision Rock Plus Mica watercolors really work better if you let them dry out in half pans. First, it kind of condenses the color, which actually bodes well for these. So these are my initial swatches from the tube, and I think the gum Arabic kind of got in the way of actually being able to use these paints. And then these are my swatches from after I allowed them to dry out on my dehumidifier for several days. So what are the pros and cons of the Supervision Super Granulating Watercolors? Well, we'll start with the cons, because I usually love Supervision products. The cons are this set was pretty pricey. This set alone was $50-something. That's why I, for the other sets, opted for the possibly dubious watercolors. This is pretty pricey. Also, I was expecting some of the sort of color splits you get with their other super granulating watercolors that I've reviewed here on the channel, and the splits weren't quite as wild as I wanted to see, but that inspired me to talk to Kabocha about us collaborating on some handmade watercolors that would actually have the sort of three-way color splits that I'm looking for. So that's actually pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to us being able to do that at some point in the future. Another con is that straight from the tube, so as is, I find that the color is kind of disappointing. I feel that these really do benefit from drying out in half pans, which requires half pans, a storage container for your half pans, and time. You gotta dry them out. I do recommend though, if you have a dehumidifier, putting them around your dehumidifier, it sped up the dry time significantly. So, oh, and another con is these tubes are much smaller than their typical super granulating tubes. The typical man, this package is kind of hard to open to be real. Not that I'm reviewing that, but you know, like these are about half the size of the other tubes. So for what you're paying versus for the amount of paint you're getting, it's just not quite as great. I still think they're interesting though, and I'm looking forward to the mini field test. I think I'm gonna paint little cherubs on the round Paul Rubens cotton rag watercolor paper. I think that'll be really cute. I look forward to sharing that with you guys. It's gonna be a little bit more time consuming than the field test that I've done on the Maritini paper, because those are already stretched. The Paul Rubens rounds are already stretched, so I don't want to remove them from the round, so I'm gonna do them one at a time, I think. We'll see. I might do a couple tests. We'll see, because I don't want them to like just buckle into nothing, but I don't want to have to re-stretch them again. So thinking about a way to kind of stabilize them while allowing me to do this a little bit more quickly, because I don't want this to take 6 months, you know, would be great. But I was thinking about using these for the background of that. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that and me swatching the 3 other sets, so the other 30 colors in this lineup, because there are, oh my goodness, 40 colors total. That's a lot. Surely among 40 colors they've got some color splits that I'm looking forward to. That is, if these aren't a counterfeit. So we'll see. I think they're pretty cool. I think once you figure out how you want to, holding up the wrong one. Once you figure out how you want to work with them, you get some really, really cool color blooms. You can get some really interesting color effects. And I generally like Supervision products just as a rule. I wasn't the hottest on their professional watercolors that Half Panton I reviewed, but it was just because they had this grittiness to them that just doesn't work for the way I paint. This is much more suited, and I think if you, first of all, in full saturation, the colors are pretty gorgeous, but you don't get that interesting granulation. They just kind of perform like any kind of pearlescent color, and we've talked about several pearlescent colors here on the channel, so if you're using them full saturation, you're not playing around with water, these are not really any different from any of the other pearlescent watercolors, like that Grabby set I reviewed not too long ago, or the Finetec pearlescents. There's just not a lot going on. You really have to start adding water and giving them a chance to granulate, and it seems like these do perform better on a cotton rag paper because it has all those nooks and crannies and because it is so receptive to water. So if you prefer to work on cheaper papers like cellulose papers or hot press papers, and you want to work in full saturation like you're a brush calligrapher, these might not be the best fit for you. I can see these really shining for commission artists, portrait artists, people who are making things that are then the original is then sold, because I think that's going to be the best opportunity to really see what makes these special and what these have to offer. It's really going to give you a chance to see the shimmer, because as somebody who works traditionally, when you scan this kind of special effects stuff, it tends to fall apart. You don't get that full chromatic effect. So I do think that if you are working for reproduction, these are not going to work for you either. And if that lighting is bothering y'all, I apologize. The sun keeps peeping back and forth between clouds. This is December in Southeast Louisiana, so that's pretty par for the course. So I'm kind of waiting to see how the other sets hold out before I really make a judgment, since this was cool, but it kind of disappointed me. It didn't quite deliver as much as I was thinking it would with Supervision and my experience with their other super granulating watercolors. But I'm gonna hold out because, like, look at that, look at that, look at that. That's gorgeous. I don't know how to achieve that yet. I mean, they really must have like loaded the paper with pigment or something. I don't know, but I'll keep playing around with them, and I look forward to sharing the field test for this with you guys. But to be real, I'm probably going to have the swatches for these three before we have the field test for this one. And am I gonna field test all 40 colors? No. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful, useful, and informative. If you are new here, hi, welcome. YouTube tells me that most of you guys come to my channel because you were searching something that I recently reviewed. So, I would love it if you'd consider sticking around, hitting that subscribe button, and clicking the bell notification, letting YouTube know that you're interested in what I'm up to here, because I am always sharing new tutorials and new reviews twice a week at the minimum. Usually I do a little bit more than that depending on what's going on in my life. So I look forward to seeing you guys for the field tests for these and the unboxing swatch for these. And I hope to see you guys again really soon. Have a wonderful day, guys, and thank you for allowing me to help you guys make art habit. Bye!